Good day, everyone. This is Mark Velo, and you're listening to Headline News. CCP calls on China-U.S. cooperation. U.S. Department of State, wait patiently. In response to frequent calls from senior Chinese Communist Party officials to the new U.S. government indicating that the United States and China should engage and cooperate as soon as possible, State Department spokesman Ned Price said on February 2nd that the United States would be in lockstep with allies and partners before engaging with Beijing. He also criticized the CCP's practices that undermine human rights. Recently, the top echelon of the CCP has been contacting the Biden administration one after another, from Xi Jinping urging U.S. not to engage in a new Cold War, to Wang Qishan, who is in charge of the U.S.-China negotiations, calling on the U.S. and China to focus on cooperation and managing differences, to Yang Jiechi, director of the Central Foreign Affairs Commission of the CCP, who gave a video speech at the National Committee on U.S.-China Relations on February 2nd, criticizing the Trump administration for promoting the decoupling of China and the United States, and calling on the two countries to restart dialogue as soon as possible. Yang Jiechi mentioned U.S.-China cooperation 24 times in his speech and called on the United States to stop interfering in Hong Kong, Tibet, and Xinjiang, and not to oppose Beijing's position on Taiwan. In response, State Department spokesman Ned Price responded that the United States will first seek consensus with allies dialogue. As a first step, we want to make sure that we are in lockstep with those allies, in lockstep with those partners. He said it was no coincidence that Biden and Secretary of State Blinken initially reached out to the U.S. closest allies in Europe and the Indo-Pacific. We see our alliances, our partnerships globally as, again, this force multiplier across any range of challenges, and that includes in our relationship with Beijing. For the Chinese Communist Party, the United States see it through the lens of competition and positioning ourselves to compete and ultimately to outcompete with the Chinese, Price added. He also noted that Washington and Beijing are in conflict over trade, technology, national security, and other related issues. And we know that China is engaged in a range of conduct that hurts American workers. It blunts our technological edge. It threatens our alliances and influence in international organizations. Price also directly criticized Beijing for undermining human rights, saying, China is engaged in gross human rights violations that shock the conscience. So we will counter China's aggressive and coercive actions, sustain our key military advantages, defend democratic values, invest in advanced technologies, and restore our vital security partnerships. At the same time, he urged Beijing to cease its military, diplomatic, and economic pressure against Taiwan and instead engage in meaningful dialogue with Taiwan's democratically elected leadership. On the other hand, Price also said it was in our national interest to cooperate on a limited basis with China. Climate is going to be one of them. While Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi had previously hinted that China remains open to restarting relations between the two sides. As of now, the Biden administration has yet to fully articulate its strategy toward the Chinese Communist Party. Some analysts believe that in the short term, the Biden administration should generally continue former President Trump's hardline policy toward China. Radio Free Asia quoted scholars as saying that the U.S. has strategically identified the CCP as a competitor and will not change, but in terms of tactics and practices, Biden will make some adjustments. Since Biden took office, he has not spoken with Xi Jinping, but has signed a series of executive orders, including taking down the State Department's website on topics such as the Chinese Communist threat and 5G, banning the federal government from saying China virus, and delaying the ban on investment in Chinese Communist military companies. Additionally, in response to frequent harassment of Taiwan by Chinese military aircraft and military exercises in the South China Sea, the Biden administration did not fight back as forcefully as the Trump administration, but said it was adopting strategic patience. Some analysts believe that Biden is verbally tough on the CCP in dealing with the U.S.-China relations, but it is worth watching whether he will adopt a policy of appeasement in his future practical actions. U.S. lawmakers call for delay in certifying Commerce Secretary to ensure continued U.S. sanctions against Huawei. In an effort to ensure that the new U.S. administration can continue to sanction Chinese Communist telecom giant Huawei, on Tuesday, February 2nd, House Republicans called on Senate colleagues to delay the confirmation of Biden's selection for Commerce Secretary, Gina Raimondo. The lawmakers want to clarify whether Raimondo supports adding Huawei to the list of trade restrictions before confirming her. Led by Representative Michael McCaul, a senior member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, more than 20 Republican lawmakers have co-sponsored a statement outlining their concerns about the threat Huawei poses to U.S. national security. The statement expresses lawmakers' concerns about Raimondo's remarks at the Senate Commerce Committee's nomination hearing on January 26. While she vowed to protect U.S. telecommunications networks from Chinese companies, she refused to blacklist Huawei. Huawei is inextricably tied to the CCP and poses a national security threat. It's beyond concerning that Governor Raimondo and the admin have failed to commit to keeping the company on the Commerce's entity list. Her confirmation should be halted until we have a concrete stance, said Representative Steve Womack. The Trump administration previously placed Huawei on the Commerce Department's entity list, trade blacklist, due to national security concerns. In a statement, House Republicans said, "The fact that the Biden administration has still refused to commit to keeping Huawei on the Department of Commerce's entity list is incredibly alarming and dangerous. We urge those senators who have a history of calling for Huawei to remain on the entity list to stick to their principles and place a hold on Ms. Raimondo's confirmation until the Biden administration clarifies their intentions for Huawei and on export control policies for a country that is carrying out genocide and threatening our national security." They added, "There have been repeated bipartisan calls to keep Huawei on the entity list in the past, with members on both sides of the aisle referring to the company as a national security threat." Huawei was placed on a trade blacklist by former President Trump back in May 2019. Trump also led a global campaign to convince allies to exclude it from their 5G networks. Washington has long said that China's communist regime could use Huawei's equipment to spy or disrupt communications networks. U.S. officials noted that under Communist Party law, private companies in China would be forced to cooperate with intelligence agencies, and Huawei was founded in 1987 by Ren Zhengfei, a former military officer in the People's Liberation Army, a member of the Chinese Communist Party. Representative John Joyce said, "There is no doubt that Huawei, a pawn of the CCP, is a threat to our national security. The Senate should hold on Governor Raimondo's confirmation until the Biden administration clarifies its intentions for Huawei and the Chinese Communist Party. On January 26, when Senator Ted Cruz strongly questioned whether certain companies would still be blacklisted, Raimondo said she would consult with lawmakers, industry, and allies and assess which approach is best for the national and economic security of the United States. Raimondo told Cruz at the time that the CCP's actions are anti-competitive, hurtful to American workers and businesses, and said the country was culpable for atrocious human rights abuses. Despite what Raimondo said, the Biden administration has excluded Huawei 5G from its threat list. The administration has also banned the U.S. federal government from referring to the new coronavirus as the China virus and Wuhan pneumonia. Florida legislators warn tech giants will be punished for selective censorship. Florida's Republican Governor Ron DeSantis has warned several technology giants with serious consequences if they continue to infringe on the privacy of Florida residents by selling their private data or deplatforming candidates with conservative views to prevent them from voicing their opinions to the voters. At a press conference on Tuesday, February 2nd, Governor DeSantis criticized tech companies such as Facebook, Twitter, and Google for manipulating and censoring information on their platforms. Floridians should have the privacy of their data and personal information protected, their ability to access and participate in online platforms protected, and their ability to participate in elections free from interference from big tech protected, he said. DeSantis suggested if a candidate is restricted on a tech company's social media platform during an election, the company should be subject to a $100,000 per day fine until the social platform reinstates the candidate's account. In addition, according to the Florida Election Commission, if a company publicly supports one candidate and opposes another, this constitutes as an act of political campaign contribution. Florida's Unfair and Deceptive Trade Practices Act also requires that technology companies give customers advance notice before closing a user's account and apply the rules consistently. In addition, the Florida Attorney General will have the authority to take action to restrain or oppose misconduct by technology companies. DeSantis said, over the years, these platforms have changed from neutral platforms that provide Americans with the freedom to speak to enforcers of preferred narratives. Consequently, these platforms have played an increasingly decisive role in elections and have negatively impacted Americans who dissent. DeSantis viewed the censorship as unacceptable, resulting in his public criticism of the tech giants. It showed an unusual discrimination tendency during the presidential election. For Parler, a social media outlet that refused to censor content, Amazon even removed it from its servers. DeSantis said, when 2.8 million Americans choose to download the application Parler and share information with friends, family, and colleagues, what was the result of that? Canceled by Amazon, Google, and Apple. The governor said big tech companies are recklessly changing the rules to make conditions favorable to themselves while suppressing the American citizens. He called for an open debate on the issues that impact Americans, rather than the outright censorship practices of these tech giants. Florida State House Speaker Chris Sprowls added, with our proposal, we are going to bring into the sunshine what I call the 5 families of darkness: Facebook, Twitter, Google, Amazon, and Apple. He said, These actors won't go unchecked here in Florida anymore. This concludes today's broadcast. Thank you for your time, and stay tuned for the next Headline News.